So hello, everybody. Welcome. I really want to thank you for taking the time to come out today and talk a little bit about hockey. The kids that were just on the ice were fantastic. I told the kids I travel all over the world and do youth hockey clinics, and these kids today were really, really competitive, and we don't see that very often. We see a lot of kids that when they come to practice, they kind of shut down. I would much rather, we would love to see that age group and even squirts. We call it recess on steroids. We want chaos. We want the kids to battle. We want them to compete. We don't want them standing in lines. We don't want them trying to be too structured, because we want to take the energy that they have and use it to their benefit. Just so you know where my background's from, I'm originally from Minnesota, but I came out east in the early 80s and went to the University of Maine. I've basically been out east ever since. And coached high school hockey for a little bit in Maine, and then coached at Norwich University, the Division III school in Vermont for a year. Then I was the associate head coach at University of Vermont, and had some great players there. In fact, I walked in the office and saw Johnny LeClair's picture up on the wall, and coached Johnny for a year, then coached Timmy Thomas for 4 years, Marty St. Louis for 4 years, some really good players. And I was the head coach at Brown University for 12 years, and I live just over, you guys I think travel over and play SRI. I live about 6 miles from the rink. In fact, my son plays college baseball at URI, and he spent about 4 days over here. I had never been to Martha's Vineyard, but he told me about his ferry trips over and then the mailboat back. He played for the Pittsfield Suns and played against the Sharks this summer. So I heard stories about this area and very positively. But I'm excited to be here, and I just wanted to talk real quickly about youth hockey and the experience of youth hockey. How many Mite parents do we have in the crowd here right now? Mite age 8 and under. Okay, so the ADM, the American Development Model, was started because the NHL came to USA Hockey with the real concern about where ice hockey was going. The cost of the sport was going up, okay? Rinks were starting to close, and our numbers of membership was going backwards. This is about 6, 7 years ago. So the NHL came to USA Hockey and said, we would like to support you financially to change the culture of youth hockey in the United States. So what we did was we took that money, and then they came after a bunch of college coaches and former professional players. So there's 7 people like me. I have New England, and then there's guys in Minnesota, Michigan, New York, out in the West Coast. And so our job is to go around and do stuff like we did today on the ice and do stuff like I'm doing right now. And it's based on sports science, and it's based on child development principles, and it's really based on age-appropriate culture. Because what's happened in youth sports, and it's really what's happened in New England in our sport, ice hockey, is we've taken the adult model and put it on little kids. 4,000 kids a year, up until about a year or so ago, were quitting mite hockey in Massachusetts. 60% of the kids that started hockey at mites were out by Pee-wee. 60%. There's only 2 sports in the United States right now that have positive membership growth in the youth sports. It's lacrosse and us, ice hockey. And so we're really excited about the changes we've made to allow the trend of the numbers going backwards to now go forward. But the adult culture put on young kids is what's really grinded up a lot of our young athletes. It's too much travel, too serious too soon, hockey year-round, all those negative things that have really killed the passion of our young athletes that hasn't allowed them to develop and grow. And so I would say to the moms and dads and coaches, priority number 1 is patience. You're looking at a Bantam B hockey player. I didn't make the A team in my hometown. I didn't make my high school team until I was a junior. And I was fortunate enough to have the passion to work at it, and then got a scholarship to go to Maine, and then ended up getting drafted by Vancouver, and then being in the sport for the rest of my life. So we don't know which one of these players is going to be the next Tim Thomas or Marty St. Louis. We don't know that. The passion has to be there, though, for them to be able to take the steps they need to take. And if we grind up that passion at a young age by traveling, especially you guys, that's my first ferry trip over. I mean, the commitment for you guys to travel hockey is a big commitment. You got to get on a boat. So I would say to you, especially at the younger ages, don't feel the need to leave the island to develop hockey players. The big misconceptions in youth sports is I have to be on the best teams, I have to play against the best competitions. It's completely false. The model for development and excellence at a young age is exactly the same in sports up until the age of about 14. What's best for the weakest kid is the same thing that's best for the best kid. If my son or daughter is a mite, my only focus is activity. It's activity. It's recess on steroids. I don't want to worry about positional play. I don't want to worry about the ref. I don't want to worry about offsides and icing. All I care about is them being active because they're in what we call their suppleness window of trainability. There's only 2 specialization sports in the world: women's figure skating and women's gymnastics. The reason why? Because they're in their suppleness window up until about the age of 11 or 12. We know once those athletes hit puberty, their agility, coordination, balance, and flexibility starts to go backwards. That's why they've had to put rules in the Olympics about how many 14-year-olds can be on a gymnastics team on the women's side. Hockey is a late development sport. So there is no rush to force your kid into a culture that's really designed for guys my size or high school aged kids. So these rinks were built for high school aged kids and pros. It wasn't built for these guys. The little studio rink in Falmouth, that's designed for this size. That's why every other sport we downsize. Little League Baseball's on a smaller field, smaller ball, smaller bats. Basketball, you buy a basketball net and put it in your driveway. It's got a lever on the back, and that thing's at 6 or 8 feet for these little guys to have success. When we put little kids on 200 by 85, it's a disaster. Right now, in the state of Massachusetts, we have 16 Massachusetts-born kids that are playing in the NHL. There's 48,000 kids playing ice hockey in Mass. 48,000. 16 are playing in the NHL. Sweden has 41,000. 7,000 fewer kids. They have 77 kids playing in the NHL. That's a huge difference. And the number one reason why is because we took adult culture, 60, 70 games, year-round hockey, AAA teams, travel all over the place. Don't let my kid be a kid, and we put it on little kids, and it's just completely blown up in our face. So we're working hard to change that culture. That's why you have the hardboards down at the end of the rink. That's why we have the bumpers. That's why when you saw the mite practice, it was all in small spaces. It was all about chaos. We want to embrace the chaos. Okay? We don't want kids whacking each other over the head or punching each other, but we want to embrace the chaos. Because what happened is the perfect storm. The perfect storm was where I became a player was not through great coaching. I became a player because I spent probably about 5 or 6 hours a day playing street hockey and pond hockey. That's where I became a player. But when everything's structured and overcoached and the adults kind of take over that medium, creativity and development and passion gets completely stunted. So there's a fork in the road at about the age of 14. And that fork is, I just want to play hockey, or I want to try to be really good at hockey. But you can't put that fork in the road at 10. If you put that fork in the road at 10, you're going to have problems at 15 because your son or daughter is going to look and go, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I'm fried. I'm burnt out. So we would say to you, become a multi-sport athlete. Go to the beach in the summer. Surf, fish, play golf, play tennis. Go out and have fun. Be a kid. Kids be kids. Okay? That's the most important thing. Every guy that plays in our Olympic team is a multi-sport athlete. Every single one over the last 3 Olympics, all the pro guys, all of them were multi-sport athletes and really good athletes in other sports. So you don't have to just play hockey to be good. Other sports help you be good and they kind of cross over with each other. Okay, but the most important thing is fun. Most important thing is passion. So the perfect storm that happened was the weather changed. Not a lot of outdoor skating, not a lot of street hockey anymore. Every sport's trying to monopolize the athletes. at a young age, year-round soccer, year-round baseball, year-round everything. And so everybody's competing. Hockey now starts in August and goes through to April, okay? When I grew up, the rinks weren't even open until October. So it's just completely kind of gotten away from us, and we're just trying to pull back a little bit. So if my son or daughter is a squirt age player, 10 and under, squirts and peewees are in what we call the skill acquisition window. And the skill acquisition window is all about touches and repetitions. So we go from activity-based, we're going to worry about just athleticism, coordination, balance, agility when they're mites, to now we're going to continue that a little bit, but we're also now going to focus on touches and repetitions, passing, skating, stick handling, shooting. And then as they get into the peewee age group, we're going to start thinking about decision-making and putting kids in conflict, putting kids in situations where they have to make a decision in a short amount of time. And I use the analogy all the time. Do we teach our kids to ride a bike, or do we set up the environment, make sure it's safe, give them a few pointers, and then we back up and we fully expect they're going to crash because they have to crash. If you don't crash on a bike, you never really learn how to ride the bike. It's the same thing in youth sports. They got to fail. So what's happened also in this culture is our best athletes don't ever become our best athletes because we don't handicap the naturally gifted ones. When you put a really good skater on 200 by 85, all they do is skate past everybody. That's why soccer downsized the soccer field. That's why in Brazil they play futsal. Everybody seen futsal? It's a small, heavy ball. They play 4-on-4 in about the size of a basketball court or tennis court. Because the Brazilians figured out, I don't want to teach full field soccer principles to kids under 14 because mentally and emotionally they can't handle that. So we're going to play futsal 4-on-4 because we're going to have a ton of goals, we're going to have a ton of creativity, and then we'll teach them the other stuff because it's age appropriate. That's why I said the thing I was impressed with the kids today is the chaos. Give me a kid who shows up every day and gets after it, and then when they get older, I can put the reins on and go, whoa, wait a second, slow it down, back off. But it's so hard to take a kid who doesn't have that energy and that passion and that drive. When they get older, I can't kick them. It's because we're in charge of the development until they're 14 or 15. Then the responsibility gets changed to the athlete. Now it's the athlete's job. If they want to get better, they've got to work at it. That's why that fork in the road's there. Okay? The responsibility shifts from mom and dad and coach to the kid. You want to be a player? Now you got to eat right, you got to sleep right, you got to train properly. You got to really take that next step. But we can't push that button when they're this age. Okay? And I will tell you this. All these kids would love to be in the NHL. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. We should embrace that goal and those desires. But there's a right way and a wrong way, and there's no shortcuts. The one thing I've learned over the years, there's absolutely no shortcut to getting to that point. So, and there's no, if you force it or you rush it, then it won't happen. If you sit back and let it kind of naturally go its path, the chances become better. And that's why patience is priority number one for mom and dad. Patience, and just let them have fun. Let them enjoy the experience. Let them fail. I was an 8th grade earth science teacher for 3 years after I graduated from Maine. And it was always interesting to see those projects come in. I had nuclear power plants. I had these things come in, and I'm looking at this kid going, there is no chance that kid did that project. No chance. I would rather see the little volcano thing with the Alka-Seltzer that barely works, because I know the kid did that. The nuclear power plant, I know mom and dad did a lot of that, but they want the kid to get the A. I'd rather have the kid get the C or the B, but they did the work. And that's not easy to do. I know as a parent, we want our kids to be successful, but it's got to be there on their deal. And that's not easy to do. That's why I said patience is, and it's, it's a lot of times easier said than done, but it's so important. It's so important for them to learn on their terms, because everybody's different. If I'm a teacher, if I'm a coach, and I've got 20 kids on my team, I can't coach to the best kids, I can't coach to the weakest kids. I got to coach to every other kid. The main reason why Sweden and Finland and those countries are doing so much better at developing athletes, because they don't care about the team. It's not the team. It's not the record of the team. It's as a coach, as an administrator, is each individual kid in my organization getting better? I have a responsibility to him, to him, to him, you know, to her. And what they need, what he needs and she needs might be completely different. So I can't just worry about putting all the top kids on one group and giving them all the resources. And it doesn't work that way. So we've got to really kind of step back and make sure that, because we're in charge of development up until about 14, we've got to make sure the environment's sound and productive for all the kids. Okay? So if my kid's older than Pee-wees and Bantams, now that's where that fork in the road is, and that's when the responsibility gets shifted over. And now I'm really going to get after it. I'm going to offer an environment up for both types of kids that just want to play, but kids that really want to play. And the biggest mistake that's happened in Massachusetts is when I go to associations and I talk to them about what it costs to play Pee-wee and Bantam hockey and what it costs to play mite hockey and how many practices a week do the mite kids get and how many practices a week do the Pee-wee and Bantam kids get, it's usually exactly the same. And we've got to make sure that our older kids have the opportunity, because my Pee-wees and Bantams, my Bantams especially, need to practice 4 days a week. 2 days a week is not going to get it done. It's got to be 4 days a week, especially if that group of kids wants to take that next step, because practice is priority number one. Practice to game ratios need to be 3-to-1. But in New England, I've got teams that play 60 games, but they only practice 25 to 30 times. It's completely flipped backwards. You don't get better playing games, you get better by practicing. Because we've done studies. The average kid in a game touches the puck for less than a minute. So if you're going over to Boston, you're jumping on the ferry, you're going to Boston, you're committing probably 3 or 4 hours, if not more, for a minute of puck time and probably about 9 to 10 minutes of skating time. It's not productive. It's not productive at all. You're better off just staying right here and practicing and playing. You know, like the little kids, we had the rings. Every kid played. They got more touches, more skating time in that 10-minute little ringette game than they will in 2 games on a weekend. And so that's what's happened. But there's that need to play and travel, and it's blown up in our face. Because your goal might not be to have your kid play college hockey or go to the pros. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But what's happened is, because the model's a little bit broken, our high school hockey's not as strong. Our Bantam hockey, it just trickles down. It's a trickle-down effect. When I talk to Jerry York and David Quinn and Teddy Donato and Jimmy Madigan, the 4 Beanpot coaches, Northeastern, BU, BC, and Harvard, when I talk to those guys, I say, what's the talent pool like in Mass right now? Roger, look at our rosters. Massachusetts 10 years ago had 225 kids playing Division I college hockey. Right now they got 105. It's been cut in half in 10 years. They're going other places to find the talent. It shouldn't have to be that way. We've just got to get control of the environment a little bit. Anybody have any questions about anything we talked about? There's no such thing as a bad question. I'm your regional manager. I'm paid. The NHL pays my salary. You're going to see the ADM, American Development Model, is going to be in every sport your kid plays, because we just got asked by the USOC if they can use it. Major League Baseball is going to meet with us because they want to change the culture of Little League Baseball and little kids baseball. They're worried to death about their sport. So you're going to see it everywhere you turn. You're going to hear it, and it's just youth sports trying to get control of the model a little bit and change the culture. I don't have if you're talking about Bantam hockey and above, I got no problem with any of that. None. Zero. I really don't. I'm not gonna lose sleep over older kid hockey, because it's United States, and if I feel that is the time to get after it. One of the mistakes that's been made is we've allowed high school hockey to die. Okay. And it's the adults' fault. The adults let it just, because reality-wise, sports science tells us that when I get to about 15, 16, 17, I need to probably have 120 practices, probably about 100 off-ice sessions, and I should probably be playing 40 games or so. But we've just let the environment get out of control, and the schools can't afford to run proper high school programs anymore because they don't have the budgets because everything's been slashed, but we haven't also taken care of the fall and the spring for those kids that want to be serious hockey players. And that's where I grew up in Minnesota. High school hockey's still king, but they started the elite league in the fall. Blake Wheeler, who played here for the Bruins, he was an all-state tight end, but he was skating 3 or 4 times a week in the fall to maintain that development in hockey. That's the challenge. He still played football for his high school team, but he would find those opportunities to get on the ice and train and skate and play. So that's the challenge that we have. And we've got to make sure the ice is there for those at age group. Because what happens in rinks all over the country, especially in the Northeast, we'll have 4 or 5 high schools in one rink, youth hockey organizations, and the ice, once the high school season comes, it just dries up. So that's why we got to put 40, 50 kids on the ice. If I'm running a high school program now, I'm gonna go find other local, a little bit more difficult here, but I'm gonna go find other high school teams to practice with. Because when I ran Division I college hockey practices, I had 30 guys my size every practice. Well, I have high school teams that are out there with 14, 15 kids on a full sheet for an hour and a half, and the talent level is from beginners almost to good players. So I don't know how I run a practice like that effectively. That's the challenge. So the junior thing, it's some of it's good, some of it's really bad, but it's junior hockey. I'm more concerned about mites and squirts and early peewees and how much they're doing. They're doing more than the high school kids are doing. High school kids, I saw captain's practice today. They're just getting on the ice now. Some of these guys have been going for a month and a half, 2 months. It's completely backwards. Good question, though. I don't know if I answered it the way you wanted.
Well, for the, the mites and squirts, the programs that pop up for them at that age too. We have a lot of those around here.
You mean the private club teams?
Yeah, yeah.
Again, I have no problem with the private club teams as long as they do it right. The problem we have with the private club teams is they play way too many games, they travel way too much, and they grind up some of our best players. So you'll have kids that'll leave here because they're good, they think they need to make that step, and what ends up happening is those kids end up coming back 2 years later and they're not any, in fact, they're worse than when they left because all they do is travel around and play a bunch of meaningless games. So that's where I said with mom and dad, it's really important to be patient. Now, to go on one of those teams when you're a Bantam or high school age kid, absolutely. But that's that fork. That's that fork in the road. Don't put that fork down at 7, 8, 9, 10. That fork's there at 14, 15. So, yes?
I've been coaching now mites and then squirts, and now my kid's a peewee. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was saying, my objective is to give these kids an opportunity to play high school.
Right.
And I guess I'm not even sure where I'm going with that question, but I think that's something that we should be emphasizing. And like, what's our objective? We're not talking about turning out NHL kids or Division I kids.
No, but but the point is, the reason why I bring those numbers up is that if you're not putting out with that number of kids, the model's not correct. So the point is if you watched high school hockey today compared to back 20 years ago, it's down. Why? How can it be down when we have better rinks, better facilities, more kids playing? How can it be down? And the reason why it's down is because their skill level and talent level isn't where it needs to be for that age. So I would tell you that your goal is to create an environment so that these kids who have the passion when they get to that stage, the analogy I would give you is we can't send kids from elementary school to middle school to high school without knowing how to read, write, and do arithmetic properly. Why are we sending kids through in hockey who can't stick handle, skate, and shoot and don't have the passion to work at it? Because we've put adult culture on them and we've held them back. It's our fault. It's really our fault, the adults' fault. We got our hooks into it, and I understand why. We're just impatient. We want everything to happen today, and development takes time and patience. So The goal, at the end of the day, for the adults isn't to develop NHLers. That's their goal. Our goal is to create the environment that gives them a fighting chance, if that's what they want. That's the goal.
I think I started doing the coaching clinics maybe the first year or the second year that you guys brought out the ADM.
Yep.
I bought into it.
Yep.
How much pushback are you guys getting from old school hockey guys that are still thinking Mike should be playing full ice hockey? And
It's changed dramatically. I will say this, that in Massachusetts, that the change, although it might not seem huge, is dramatic. We will see in 10 years, you'll see those numbers change. You'll start to see more Massachusetts kids doing well. Because what's happened now is, because people have adopted the station-based practices in cross-ice hockey, is now the kids that are coming out of mites into squirt, I'll go watch a squirt practice, and I'll be like, oh, these kids. And then I'll watch the Bantams who didn't get a chance to go through it. The squirts are further ahead than the Bantams are. And it's like, how did we let it get that bad? You know, unfortunately, my kid, who's now just turned 20, I knew it was dysfunctional, but there was no options. It was go to your single team practice, 10 kids on a full sheet, and they're doing the same drill for 25 minutes. And you wonder why the kids didn't move forward. That's exactly why.
second question.
Yep.
Every year everybody complains about how long the hockey season is.
Yeah.
And every year it seems to get a week longer.
Yeah, well, no. The length of the season's a tricky thing because we have rinks that open and we can't afford them to go out of business. They've got to make money. But that, and unfortunately what's happened in New England is we let the leagues dictate everything. The leagues dictate when we're going to start games. Say, start hockey in August if you want, or September. Doesn't mean you have to start playing games in August and September. I mean, college basketball, they'll go an entire month before they play their first game. And it's all training. So have the ice, set up 3-on-3, 4-on-4 games, bring the hardboards out, do like we just did, skill sessions with small area stuff. Do that all you want. Make it optional. Let the kids go play soccer, football, whatever they want to do. But let's not start the leagues until, like this time of year. That's the key. And because the rinks still need to stay open and make money. We don't want rinks closing, so we got to, but also, let's get the older kids. Let's get the older kids on the ice more in the fall. Not so much the younger guys. Let these guys go play soccer and football and do other stuff. Hey, good. Hey, what do you got, buddy?
Is it good for a team to have 4 practices a week, or
How old?
any division?
Well, I would say at Pee-wees and Bantams, yeah, 4 is okay. It's maybe getting a little bit much for Pee-wees. Squirts, 2, maybe 3 practices once in a while. Mites, 2 in a game on a weekend. That's pretty much what we'd like to see. You're welcome, buddy. Good question. Yes?
So to go back to the leagues dictating how long the season is, how do we change that?
I would say it depends on the age. Pee-wee age, I would say, is a little bit of a different discussion than squirts and mites. What's happened in a lot of areas that are like you guys is they've pulled their kids out of leagues and they basically just run their own house thing. Now, that doesn't mean periodically, once a month, you jump on the boat and you go across and you play 3 games on a weekend. You make it a special little trip. But to go over every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, it's a lot of wear and tear on the kids and a lot of wear and tear on mom and dad. So that's just got to be managed properly. When you start talking about 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. You're talking about 5, 6, 7 to 10, that's a big, big deal.
Well, our sport program right now, the league that we're in is out of Rhode Island.
Yeah, I right, yeah.
Our sport teams travel to Rhode Island one day and Worcester the next.
Yeah, that can have huge negative effects. Yeah, I mean, I think you just got to manage that. And I think, to be honest with you, where a lot of that pressure, and don't take this the wrong way, folks, because I've lived it myself, a lot of the pressure to join those leagues come from mom and dads. Because they feel like if they're not in the league and they're not in the best league, that their kid's going to be hurt. You got to look at the other side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is the travel and kids sitting in cars for long periods of time. That's the difficult part. You know, where I grew up in Minnesota, they've never allowed full ice hockey at mites. They don't allow travel hockey at mites. It's not allowed in the state. It's house hockey. Okay? Minnesota used to be Minnesota and Mass, it's Minnesota and Mass has fallen to here. Okay? So it's just got to kind of get, and it's slowly coming back. It's slowly coming back. But that pressure to, because here's what happens. If you ask these kids, do you want to travel up to Boston? Yeah. They love it. But you just got to manage that. They also love chocolate and pizza, and if we let them have it every day, it's not special anymore. And it's not healthy. So you just kind of manage that. And then when they get, because here's the deal, when they're Bantams, they should be going over. But what happens is by Bantams, everybody's kind of like, ugh, this is not fun anymore. So that's the challenge. Folks, thank you very much. I'll be here for a couple more hours. If I can help you anytime, let me know.